Indulal. I am an Ayurvedic physician. When the organizers called me to make this presentation, I introduced myself as a fringe element. I exist on the periphery of Ayurveda, and that gives me this privilege to speak what I want. This introduction should also be a sort of a disclaimer. Of course, I take responsibility of what I'm going to speak. I'm primarily addressing the student community here because experts know everything, and it is students who need to be told about certain things which are of a cause of a concern to me as a follower of Ayurveda. The decision to address the student community is basically because of their role as a responsible link in the continuity of Ayurveda. They are all here to, or you are all here to learn Ayurveda, become doctors, but your primary responsibility is as a link between the past and the future. So it's what you understand, what you translate in the real setting, actually that will represent Ayurveda in the future. So there, it's needed to know the status of Ayurveda. I'm not going to speak about the status of Ayurveda, but I'm going to speak about certain concerns that haunts, in fact, all lovers of Ayurveda. And I think I should start with a proverb which I learned in school, that he who knows and knows he knows, he is a wise man, seek him. He who knows and knows not he knows, he is asleep, wake him up. He who knows not and knows he knows not, he is a child, teach him. And he who knows not and knows not he knows not, he is a fool, shun him. A great significance for the Ayurvedic student community this particular proverb has. The reason is that how many of us know what we really know, and how many of us know what we don't know? Not knowing is not a crime, but not knowing about what you don't know is in fact a crime, and that decides your future and the future of our science Ayurveda. And in fact, awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom, as Socrates told. And here I will be actually asking certain questions which I don't expect you to answer, but if you don't know, but I'll be happy if you can search for the answers in your journey as student and as practitioner, because that will actually decide, that will actually help our Shastra, which is, to me, is in a, not just to me, for all of us, is in a state of transition. And when we ask the right question, we are already having the half of the solution for the problem, as Carl Jung has really told it. And the second reason why I want to address the student community is that, yes, there is a great demand for Ayurveda. There are many colleges. We were students, there were less than 100 colleges in the country. 4 times, more than 400 colleges all over. So that means there is a level of saturation. But still, the world needs good Ayurvedic doctors. And there, only the fittest will survive. And only the excellent student can actually represent Ayurveda in an effective manner. So, whatever I am posing today as questions should help you to excel in your pursuits as a student and practitioner. And what I am going to speak are also my thoughts, my concerns, my responsible queries, and I have a set of a dozen questions to you. And when you listen to that, it may at least deceivingly appear as negative, pessimistic, cynical, or skeptical. They are not actually. Even if you want to call it like that, you can call it as a positive negativity. It is far better than toxic positivity. And we are not stopping there by asking questions or raising concerns about Ayurveda. because that's from where we need to start the journey, and that's the entire philosophical process. We start our journey from the reality, and we end it at the point of realization. And in that context, I think we are, as students of Ayurveda, we are like Buddha. So he was a prince, and he was protected from all the miseries in the world, because someone told his father that this boy will quit the material world and then become a saint. So he was actually guarded from all the miseries around him, and he lived in a palace, believing that is life. So the students of Ayurveda right now, they are actually living in the palace. It's in a castle, where only the demand of Ayurveda, the possibilities of Ayurveda are being told. But outside that palace, there are many things that are happening, which are either hidden from you, or no, you don't care to understand that. The moment Siddhartha saw the misery, the transformation happened to him. And then he set his journey. He didn't commit suicide, but he started his journey from there until realization. So that's why the four truths of noble truths of Buddhism: there is suffering, there is a cause for suffering, there is a solution, and there is a path. So when we discuss the problems of Ayurveda, don't take it as negative things. They are not negative. These are a positive understanding of certain things which you need to find solution. So your journey should actually start from understanding these issues. So that's the reason why Ashtanga Sangraham, Shishyopaniyam, the characteristics told for the Shishya are Jidadvanda, Dhira. Here the Dhira, the word could be translated as courageous, but the Upanishadic definition of Dhira is someone who has the ability to look within, who can actually direct the senses inside. So that is Dhira. So all the students need to be Dhira in this context, to do an introspection and see what is actually the status of Ayurveda. And the opposite of Dhira is not Bhiru or the fearful, but it's called as Bala, immature. So if you want to grow as a mature Vaidya, you need to be Dhira. And for that reason, you need to look inside. What I am doing is only to help you in that process. So there are many perspectives. There could be many questions. There are maybe more serious issues than what I'm going to raise about Ayurveda. I'm just looking at certain things that came to my mind instantly when I spoke to the people behind this program. So why I said Ayurveda is in a state of transition, that we are right now placed between what is ancient and what is modern, classical and contemporary, classical or contemporary. And at the same time, there are many voices from outside and inside the Ayurveda community about changes that are needed, starting from the foundational principles to the application. What needs to be get rid of, what needs to be adopted. That discussion actually happening more forcefully than in the past. So there, when we are there, naturally we are in a state of flux, like in an uncertainty. We don't know what to do before we are supposed to be taking a new direction of course. So that's the reason why I told we are in a state of transition. So when we are between what is ancient and what is modern, and we are in a state of uncertainty, we are experiencing uncertainty, not able to decide the course that needs to be, what to be done. That's exactly where we make certain crucial decisions. What will be the future of Ayurveda? It based on our decisions, our actions. So coming back to the first point, as you as the responsible link, you play a crucial role in this transition phase. People behave differently when they are put in such a situation. One scientist, they say that they assimilate, in the sense they adopt the dominant culture and reject what is actually old in the sense but original. So these are the people who are modernists, who speaks for modernization of. The second type of people who actually separate, who reject all the modern aspects, influence, and then strongly adhere to what is traditional. These are people who are purists, Shuddha Ayurveda. Then comes integration, where both are adopted. The new and the old are adopted. And the fourth is a category we don't find in Ayurveda, marginalized. There are isolated uh, instances to prove such an existence of such a kind of people also, who reject both old and new. So what we need to adopt, what we need to reject, what we need to integrate, it's in our hands in that. So this particular discussion, which or the questioning which you need to initiate, should actually help Ayurveda to assimilate or separate or integrate whatever that needs to be done for the science at this stage. In this particular context, I need to tell a bit about Shuddha Ayurveda thing. There was no, when you say Shuddha Ayurveda, that means there is Ashuddha Ayurveda somewhere. So this particular movement happened some say 70 or 75 years back, when the new regulations or rules came into Ayurveda, like the Indian Medical Council Act, the Drug and Cosmetic Act, when little after the institutionalization of Ayurveda, when the rules and regulations started being applied, the people, the purists felt that all these things will actually make Ayurveda compromise or dilute its core principles and make it something that is different from what is actually original. So the Shuddha Ayurveda movement there. But if you take a step back and look at what led to the origin of these rules and regulations, you find that it was in response to an action taken by the Ayurvedic community to position Ayurveda in front of a new dominant or dominating Western medical system. So when they felt that the modern medicine is slowly gaining ground in the in our country, they tried to position a modern Ayurveda in front of it to counter the influence of modern medicine. If you look at the articles written, say 120 years back in Malayalam magazines, you can find that they don't speak about Ayurveda, they speak about Nattu Vaidya. Even the Department of Ayurveda at that time was known as the indigenous medicine, the local tradition department, or something like that. So it was in their effort to position Ayurveda as something modern against and make it present along with the modern medical system. That's when people felt the threat and then started speaking about Shuddha Ayurveda. So this is happening again because we are again looking at another level of modernization, and this time we are not just looking at the application or the diagnostic tools integration or something, but we are at this stage we are even looking at modifying our own foundational principles, something which we considered as constant for the past, present, and future, and that is something that is unchangeable and permanent. Even that is being questioned at this particular stage. But despite all these rules and regulation, you see that even now we are unable to fully adhere to those regulations. A couple of weeks back, it was in the newspapers that the Kerala is way behind in enforcing the rules and then actually having the Ayurvedic Pharmacopoeia of India guidelines being implemented. We are unable to reach even to that particular level. But right now, today, if you look at the paper, you find that within 1 year, 6 months to 12 months, all manufacturing units should have WHO GMP. So the force with which we are made to adapt to new place, time, rules, regulations actually puts a lot of pressure in the stakeholders, the practitioners, the students, and then but in a hurry when we do many things, it should not actually, we should not make Ayurveda lose its identity there. So that's the intention there. Now, with this introduction, I would like to pose a set of questions. And the first is, what do we learn? What are we learning? Yes, we are learning Ayurveda, but is it the real Ayurveda? That's a question there. Because BAMS degree, we all know that was designed to position Ayurveda education at par with that of the Western medicine. And in that process, to gain equality for Ayurvedic practitioners with the allopathic counterparts. So that was the intention. So so exactly that's the way that MBBS, BAMS, MD, DM, we follow the same pattern, because that's how we say that a graduate, a postgraduate, a super specialist, it's slowly evolving, but we are in the same pattern. So the question is whether that's the model that is suitable for Ayurveda. Many people discussed, and we leave it to that. But that's not exactly what I meant when I say that. What are we learning? Because if you look at it, the knowledge domain is what we claim as India's contribution to the world is shrinking over many millenniums. If you look at Siddhanurveda, it was supposed to be dealing with Rajya Bharanatantra. That means everything dealing with the ruling governance of the country. But right now it is understood and pursued as something as Yuddha Shastra. Similarly, Gandharva Veda, it dealt with all the kalas, including Kama Shastra. Now, right now, it is understood as something dealing with music. Same with Karinyopa Veda. I don't think it has got that name right now. It dealt with everything related to humans, domestic, social, economic, political, everything dealt with. But now, that is understood as Stapatya Veda or architecture thing. Similarly, Ayurveda was also supposed to be dealing with everything in this universe and outside. It's for evolution, formation, and everything related. But right now, it is being understood as a medicine. That means over many millenniums, many yugas, the knowledge space has shrunk. And as Sushruta says that about an Ayurvedic text which had 100,000 shlokas and 100,000 chapters in that, and said that you cannot comprehend that, so we are giving you a short abridged version. So that means though the name is the same for Ayurveda then and now, what is available to us in the form of the text are actually a percentage of what was originally there. It's untraceable, so we don't miss that. But even in what that is available, the comprehensive knowledge. So what is the amount of knowledge that is there as part of the curriculum? It's how much, what is the percentage? People say that only 50% or 60% is Ayurveda, the rest are modern medicine. And in even that 60%, you need to attend the classes only for a number of days every year. And suppose you are availing the leave, vacation and everything, what is the time dedicated for listening to the classes? And in that, when you study, you can actually appear for the exams and score at just a pass mark, 50% or 40%, and still we call us Ayurveda Acharya. It's the irony. But as we say that Acharya Padamadati, we don't get 1/4 of the knowledge. We get much less than what is actually available. But I'm saying, don't feel discouraged. But within what you have in hand, that you need to see that there is more inside that. Like William Blake said, to see a world in a grain of sand and to feel a heaven in a wild flower. So we need to within, or like Mayura and the reference in Yoga Vasishta, that in the egg of a peahen, you see a dancing, you can visualize a peacock with feathers unfurled dancing. So within whatever you have, it a handful of knowledge what you have, you need to see there is much more lying inside, and you need to keep exploring that. There are exemptions, like somebody was telling about a great scholar, Vaikattu Pachimuthu, who wrote texts like Hridaya Priya and Sukhasadhakam and all that. And he had formal Ayurveda education only for some 64 days. So within that period, he could actually master, or he could have the thought process, Ayurvedic thought process, which helped him to master the text completely, or the knowledge science completely later. The exemptions are there, but we are ordinary human beings. We need to work to really actualize the knowledge of Ayurveda. The second question I have is, are we using a compatible learning method? Answer is categoric no, because we are not, basically we are not learning from the original source, we are not learning from the Samkhya. The Sanskrit is not mandatory, philosophy is not mandatory. So that means we don't have the tools to actually approach the Sanskrit text, and we are not facilitated to have a thought process which is very essential to understand the science. So two of the basic qualities of the Vaidya is said to be Shastra Jnanam and Shastra Adhishtita Uhapoha. So to have the Shastra Jnanam, you need to have access to the original source, and for that you need to master the language, that is Sanskrit, in which it is written. And to have a thought process that is based on the science, you need to have the philosophical background of Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, etc. But without giving importance to that, something told totally differently, it is not going to be that effective. And if you look at the way a typical Ayurveda classroom, it's not based on Shishyopaniyam as told in Ashtanga Hridayam or Sangrama or something like that. No. You will be surprised to learn that we follow a method, a program that was started some 200, 220 years back in Prussia. Because when Napoleon defeated Prussia, the soldiers ran away from the field. So that brought, along with the failure, that brought a lot of disgrace to the country. And they approached this William Humboldt, who was a philosopher and academician, felt that you devise a strategy where the soldiers won't run away from the field. So that's the reason why he developed a concept of public school, which later became, we followed it even into Ayurveda colleges. Like it says that teaching by ear rather than by ability. These are all features which he devised. Formal pedagogy, where the students sit in a row in desk in front and in front of a standing teacher, and set school days in that way, which is by you ring the bell and then the class starts, and between periods again the bell rings. A predetermined syllabus rather than open-ended learning, and several subjects in one day rather than studying to one subject for many days. So this particular program was defined for totally different purposes, not at all conducive for a science like Ayurveda. And presently, what we are doing to this, the same model we have added rote learning. We mechanically, habitually repeat the slokas and memorize them, hoping that we are mastering the science. Very bad. The reason is that the outcome is that we only do padha. There is no avabodha and anusthana there. The verdict is that the current method applied to teach Ayurveda is incomplete, insufficient, ineffective. Very sadly. Because Ayurveda education is also a man-making process. Along with it gives the knowledge that is transmitted in the process, it should also help you to undergo a psycho-spiritual transformation. You are supposed to be taking a second birth once you master the science, and in that birth you are supposed to be having Brahma Sattva and Arsha Sattva. So you look about those sattvas in Charaka Samhita, you will find what a true learning can actually do to you. The third question I have is, I'm sorry, there is some voice disturbance. I will just take a break and come back. Sorry, Prasad, help me. Okay. The question number 3 is, why is the no-do gap widening? The no-do, the gap between what we know and what we need to do, the gap is widening. The typical example is, it's very funny that we classify Ayurveda syllabus into clinical and non-clinical. The major damage, one of the causes of major damage done to science is such a classification. That's what I feel, because a science, the prayojanam of which is dhatu samya kriya, then how can it have components that are non-clinical? That's one question which the authorities needs to address. But look at things what we learned, like say in Agatatantra. Agatatantra is a non-clinical subject, if I understood it correctly. That it in the Saptama Vega of the Visha, it is told that you make a mark, cut a mark as if the feet of Guru, and then apply meat. So these are things we study, and then you don't have any. Even the teachers who teach this haven't practiced that, and you don't see it in practice, and you don't apply it in practice. And what is the purpose? What needs to be done? Because legally, whether you are qualified to do that or not, whether the poison cases to be treated by Ayurvedic doctors or not, these are all secondary. But what if you are teaching something, it needs to be applied, and it should be taught by people who have actually applied and seen. Otherwise, what happens? This knowledge and this practice is lost in time. And when we lose anything like that, even the government cannot come to aid us to revive that. Look at what we lost in the past. And anything that is lost from here now, it's lost forever. We will never be able to do that. The question number 4 is that why do we rely heavily on modern diagnostic tools? The biggest temptation actually we have is in that. And when it comes to diagnostic technology, the influence is great. You cannot avoid that. And this is not a new thing. You find in the Malayalam article paper Dhanvantari, the first medical journal in Kerala. You find that thermometer, stethoscope, etc., are introduced as Ushnamabhini Yandra and Uraparishodhana Yandra 120 years back. So they are all totally amazed, taken by the magic of technology, and then actually fell for it, saying that in the introduction to Ushnamabhini Yandra or thermometer, the author says that now you are able to diagnose fever even from a distance. You don't have to be near the patient. They're totally against is fever, jwara. Such questions are there. But how can you do that without being near the patient? So this is exactly the blame we have for the modern medicine. How the influence of the technology that increase the distance between the patient and the physician. That's one of the biggest drawbacks of modern medicine. And we are actually, when we rely on this technologies more and more, the distance gets widened. That's not alone, that comes secondary. But how is it compatible there? I'm not. There are many physicians who very effectively utilize it. I'm not taking, but we need to students. You need to find that answer, because we give importance to functional components of the body, and how can we relate it to the structural definition of a health? And if then investigation doesn't reveal anything structurally, do we still call it a disease, or do we call it as a psychological problem? And in the process, we are slowly engaging a pathologist and a radiologist. Eric Castle, a great author, he calls them as referees in the medicine. And we have taken them already as the fifth pada. So this is something you need to find answer. And see, the Western medicine is very critical here. You can find many great books written by great scientists, authors, Lewis Thomas, Can Medicine Be Cured? The Lost Art of Healing. They look at components which they lost in the process of adaptation to technology. Dehumanized medicine, how it happened. But when we rely on it, when we are losing our components of examination, touching, asking, listening, etc., we are actually following that line of destruction. And we are not critical also here. That's a great thing about the Western medicine. They are critical about it. We should learn that from them. Question number 5 is, why are we limiting our understanding and intervention to the physical realm alone? We are great speakers. We claim everything. We say that Ayurveda science of life is a combination of body, mind, and spirit. Roga is Deha Manasi Santapeti. It affects body and mind at the same time. All diseases are psychosomatic. We make claims very easily, but in practice we limit to the physical realm alone. Why we need to say? Because if you look at when you sit in the classroom and you have a Kushta Rogi in front, you should ask your teacher why you are not asking about the karmic causes, because one disease where it is very directly mentioned, and in the prescription, if it is being identified, why in the prescription no Vratadama Yamaseva or Shiva Sudha Bhaskara Aradhana that's being prescribed there, or anything related to that patient's belief system? Why that is not being taken into consideration? Emotional. Our definition, we say that even before WHO defined health in a holistic way, our samadosha prasanna mendriyamana. But how much importance we give in understanding that and then applying in helping the patient? Because the same author Eric Castle, he told that a disease actually causes two problems to the patient. One is the pain or the symptoms of that particular disease. Second is the suffering because of the disease or the treatment. So we need to address both. And there it cannot be purely medicine alone. Compassion, that's the reason empathy. These are being taught in schools, in medical schools right now, training. These are all inside our system there. And we define medicine as something that is the three types. We don't apply it. We forget that even Ajar Rasayanam, Sadvritam, clinician forgets that because there is no utility in a clinical system. So that is in a big way, a bit close to Ayurveda, to the patients. And in the process of continuity, we are shrinking again here. Question number 6 is, what happened to our Vaidya Rogi relationship? Because Vaidya Vritti Chaturveda, Maitri and Karuna, two things. Or another Rogi Putravat Samupachari. So the relationship is between like a friend, two friends, or like a parent and a child, or a teacher and a student. But in the process of modernizing our practice, modern efforts, starting from the external to the internal, when we change to take a modern outlook, we are actually slowly becoming the relationship is slowly evolving as that between a client and a service provider. But what is the definition of Chikilsa? We say Uttamam Chikilsa. Say that Adurasya Antaratmanam. Like a yogi or a philosopher, if you don't enter the consciousness of the patient, the true healing do not happen. So we have a claim, we have a proper definition, but we don't actually engage in that step of dialogue. I have one in Shushrusha. The word is translated as care, but the literal meaning is good listening. And so, because Shrotram and Shushrusha comes from the same root that means listening. So, how much time we listen to the patient? So, everything actually matters. But when you look at medicine, the body, medical reports, and the physical findings, and then ignore all the other components, we are not actually providing authentic Ayurveda care there. I have a good model here. I hope I'll be able to show it. How best this can be, this relationship between the Vaidya and the Rogi, how effective it can be. I have a model here to say that, to show you. So this is from a beautiful book on traditional medicine in Kerala by Sri Unikrishnan. This dialogue is between a patient and a physician. If you read it, it doesn't make any sense. The oil stored in a horn has no eyes. I do apply the paste of leaves of Echil Tali on head. You only have plain rice gruel for dinner. The physician is asking. The patient is telling, I adorn my hair with the leaves of Sakdevi plant. The physician is asking, is the entrance gate to your home made of gold? Patient is telling, I sleep daily after lunch. So this seemingly unrelated questions and answers have got a very deep connection. When the physician is saying that the oil stored in a horn has no eyes, mean that oil stored in a horn, because earlier there was a practice of emptying the horn of cattle and then filling it with oil. That's considered Ushna, and that's bad for the eye. That's what the physician is telling. And the patient tell, don't bother, I apply Echil Thali, which is cooling in to the head, so which is cooling, which counteracts the heat of the oil stored in the horn. But Echil Thali is considered inauspicious. It's alakshmikam. Let's say that you have only plain rice gruel because you cannot afford to have a proper dinner. You only have kanji at dinner. That I adorn my hair with the leaves of Sahadevi plant because it is considered Lakshmi Karam. It imparts prosperity, auspiciousness. Then the physician asks whether your gate, when your entry gate is also made of gold because of the prosperity, is making fun. And the patient says, I sleep after lunch because which is again, which takes away the Lakshmi, it's the prosperity there. So this may be a imaginative story, but it speaks about a possibility there of communication, informed communication between a physician and a patient. So that's where we were once upon a time. The question number 7 is, why do we make knee-jerk reactions, especially when we are confronted medically? We're quick to come to conclusions, the responses. The typical example is what happened during COVID-19. See, the epidemic, it's already told in Ayurveda, Janavadothamsani. It is virus, it's told in Ayurveda, Bhuta, Krimi. It is contagious. Yes, we have a shloka, Prasanga, Gatrasam, Sparshat. This medicine is Remdesivir, it is antiviral. We have Zinjivir, which is an Ayurvedic antiviral. We have HCQ, which is a repurposed medicine, which is originally given for malaria. We have Ayush 64, which is again initially tried for malaria, repurposed for. So why do we need to do that? So why can't we have our own language, in the language in the sense not English or Sanskrit or anything, because a scientific language to communicate? Why do we need to follow that? Because it doesn't actually take us anywhere. Because we have seen when the first case of AIDS was reported, say 40 years back, it's already told in Ayurveda, Shosha, Rajesh, etc. So in the past 40 years after making that claim, where is our knowledge about AIDS? What is the knowledge about our needs? What is our role in controlling or giving relief to the AIDS patient all over the world? We haven't, except for the claims that are made initially and very isolated incidents, we are nowhere, because that's not the way to start with. And we don't have to explain everything, even if we can't say it, because tacit knowledge is there. Because something which we gain through experience, which cannot be fully communicated, we don't have to be bothered about that. Because even the Veda, the one definition is that it need not, the knowledge that need not actually be known through Pratiksha and Anumana. But it is useful for life. So that definition is there. That means we don't have to be bothered if we cannot explain. If your teacher says that I felt so, and you feel that his decision was correct in diagnosis or something, you need to respect even if he can't explain. But you should see that in result. When the same thing happened when the safety of Prabhavam say that Ajintya, the text says that Ajintya. And Charagan towards the end says that like he uses the same simile, that sun, moon, and wind to explain its role in the body. And the same way it says that just like the three things which cannot be fully understood, it's very difficult to understand the doshas. So we need to accept what we cannot do. And that is our style, that they need to accept also. We don't have to follow any path. The same happened when the safety of Ayurveda were raised. That should actually have helped us to do a sort of introspection, to see whether because we have deviated grossly from the traditional lights, the industrialized production, the market samples, the raw materials that are sourced. We have made a lot of compromises there. So when somebody comes up with a doubt regarding the safety, it is our responsibility to prove that we are safe. But before that, we make statements saying that this is the drug lobby acting against us. We need to make very studied responses, and in a way that is suitable for Ayurveda, and that is Ayurvedic. The question number 8 is what influences our prescription? Very thing like Ashtanga, Hridayam, Jvara Chikilsa, 177 shlokas. A student, you may learn it completely by heart. You will be able to chant it from beginning to end. And when you sit and see a patient with fever, most of you will be writing Amrtarishtam and Vettumar and Gulika, two of the formulations that are not there in that particular chapter. So what is actually influencing your prescription? Have you seen a doctor giving advice without medicine? Even Jwara or Atisara or Chardi, where that just you need to watch very carefully and then you don't have to take any medicines. But we can't. Can we give that advice and charge our consultation fee? Saying that you don't need any medicines again. But we don't have that level of confidence because our influence, what influences us are different. Because when you write Amrtarishtam, Vettumar and Kulika, you meet the target and you get certain percentage of, because industry rules the prescription. They decide, and our prescription style which even influences the industry also. So it's like a vicious circle. If you look at it, the worst damage that that is done to Ayurveda is the change in the prescription style, to me personally, because from a contextual medicine which looked at a particular dosha involvement in a particular stage, what needs to be done in that particular disease. From that, we have moved to disease-specific medications, anti-arthritic, antipyretic, anti-diabetic, like that we have. If that shift is perhaps most damaging for Ayurveda as a clinical medicine. And a great industrial representative told that they had nearly 800 plus classical medicine formulation. Now they have less than 1/4 because practitioners are not using that. Instead, they need to introduce pattern products that disease specific. So what actually influence that? Because we blame the drug lobby controlling the modern medicine. In a way, we are also being very subtly but very effectively controlled by the industry there. That's that thing. Question number 9. Where are we placed in the healthcare delivery system? We speak about the demand. We saw what happened to Ayurveda at the beginning of the pandemic. Government through ordinance, governmental orders, it was told that people suffering, diagnosed with the COVID-19 should go for Western medicine only. It's only because the Ayurveda community raised the voice. People started looking for options outside because the limitations of the Western medicine was exposed, and then that made the people to look for other options like Ayurveda. But we are look what happened to the public health bill in Kerala. Totally sidelining Ayurveda. We have no role in diagnosing, treating, or even giving medical certificates. Some changes have been done because of the intervention of the Ayurvedic community, but it is still incomplete. Best example of tokenism is in the integration of Ayurvedic system into certain disease prevention programs like cancer, cardiovascular diseases, and stroke. If you look at it, you can find that the PDF view is accessible on that. You can find that diabetes. What's the role Ayurveda to play? Ayurveda can, according to that particular document, which is claimed as the model of integration, okay, we can treat a pre-diabetic conditions. We are not supposed to treat diabetes patients. Pre-diabetic condition we can treat, and if there is still no relief in the sugar level, you need to refer that patient to a proper setup. And in diagnosed diabetes conditions, it needs to be addressed by a proper. Similar for hyperlipidemia. We are not borderline cholesterol, hyperlipidemia. Borderline hypertension, we can treat. Cardiac conditions, rheumatic heart disease, etc., cancer, etc., they are all to be referred to proper. That means we are engaged, but we are only tolerated. We are not actually integrated there. Tokenism. Same thing about co-location. As part of the National Rural Health Mission, you find Ayurvedic dispensaries in all the public health. I think all that, but there is little or no interaction between the two streams of medicine. and there is no protocol of cross-reference. That doesn't happen, but even if that happens, there is no documentation. There is no personal or social interaction between the two practitioners of the two streams of medicine. And the Ayurvedic doctors there are supposed to be participating in the national health programs, which is mainly ruled and trained by the Western medical practitioners. So when we speak about integration and other things, we are only tolerated. What we receive is only tokenism, not the real portion we actually deserve. The question number 10 is, why do Vaidyas refrain from social action? Because once we complete our course, we sit in a clinic and we expect the sick people to come to us. That's not exactly the way Ayurveda wanted it to be practiced. Because you need to extend your helping hands to the suffering humanity, people who are stuck in the pool of suffering. We need to lift them up. So this happens only when you walk out of your clinic and be with the masses there. We need to keep our eyes, ears open, not social media, but to the society, and see what role we can actually play. Two examples is when in Kerala, Karnataka, Telangana, and everything, the students, the schools, the mandatory water breaks. The intention was good. The students were sitting without drinking water, so we need to have water breaks. But we have a better method. So allow them to drink water when they are thirsty. You don't have to have a compulsory break and then now drink water. That's not what Ayurveda says. So we need to write to them saying that this is not what actually say. Individual cannot actually help in such process. We need to collectively address, saying that this is not the way to make students drink, because thirst is a vega. It needs to be addressed only when it is initiated, and if it is not initiated, you are not supposed to forcefully induce thirst, because that's what we learn in Ayurveda. So we can make that process more effective, more individualized, helping to the students. Similarly, honey being introduced in flights instead of sugar. So honey cannot be added with anything that is hot. These are very minor examples. So when you read a newspaper article about it, you need to see that what is actually Ayurveda says, how it can actually help in a better way, and how it can actually amend that particular rule so that it is useful for the user and it's also agreeing to the principles of Ayurveda. So such a thing will come only when we are socially responsible by this. Question number 11 is again another very serious thing. Why are we not bothered? Why are we not bothered about the manufacturing? It's industrialized production. So we sit in a clinic and we get the medicine and we prescribe. We are just there to do what is being provided by. In Malayalam, we had learned a small poem in our school, which would be translated this in the, like say, the container storing things in the storeroom, in the kitchen, and that container delivers paddy, and the servant will boil it and dehusk it. My mother will cook it, and I will sit on the dining table and eat it. So this is exactly what is happening. I'm sorry for the poor translation, but this is exactly what is happening in these days. Quite irresponsibly, not thinking seriously about what's going on behind that manufacturing process. We sit in a clinic, expect to be supplied the needed medicine by the industry there. This is not the way to do that, because a study conducted in 2008 to 2009 in 18 states in India, they found that none of the Ayurvedic practitioners use any raw herbs. They use only processed medicine. One second thing is that they don't make any medicines themselves. Exemptions are there, but in the 18 states, it does not seem. This is not the way. We need to be aware of what's going on. Because again, this pharmaceuticalization was a response to the threat of modern medicine. But in that process, the responsibility went from the Vaidya to the industry. We make claims, industry make claims that we have supervision of the Vaidyas. But that Vaidya is there to support the institutional interest there, no doubt at all. Exemptions are there. I'm not telling any specific thing, but we need to ensure that what you get as as medicine in bottle or in strip contains the same ingredients as what you have in mind or what you read in the text, and that being processed in the right manner, and they are safe and effective. We need to be aware of that. What goes into it. We need to be very clear about it. We have every right to that. And industry's responsibility is to convince the individual practitioner that it's made with the right ingredients and it's being made in the right manner. Because if we are not careful about what we actually prescribe, what we give to the patient, it's a criminal negligence. It's a criminal complacency. And finally, question number 12 is, what do we need, classical or contemporary? Actually, nobody asked that. It is me who said that. Because ideally is always classical and contemporary. That's how Charaka speaks about it, Purana Chapunarnava. So we don't have to be entirely classical. We don't have to be entirely contemporary. There is a possibility being classical and contemporary. Because that's a reason the student, again, Ashtanga Sangrah in Jitadvanda, who was actually has the ability to overcome the pull from the extremes in that. So you follow Sarva Anuyaya Pratipadam, Sarva Dharmeshu Madhyamam. You follow the middle path. That's exactly what we mean when we use the words classical and contemporary. I have one presentation, one slide to show you that. See, these are the words of Sri Aurobindo. Why he is called as a social reformer. It's very evident in what he has written here. I will just read it out, because every scripture must have necessarily two elements, temporary and perishable, belonging to the ideas of the people and period and the country in which it is produced. And the other is eternal and imperishable and applicable to all ages and countries. The vitality of a classic consists in the power to produce from time to time men who confirm and correct from their own experience truth enunciated in it. The commentators speak to us from experience and express in a form relevant to their age and responsive to their needs, the ancient wisdom of the scripture. Only those scriptures, religions, philosophies, which can be constantly renewed, relived, their stuff of permanent, constantly reshaped and developed in the inner thought and spiritual experience of a developing humanity, continue to be of living importance to mankind. The rest remain as monuments of the past, but have no actual force or vital impulse for the future. I can't quote, though Puranam cha Punarnava is a bit of a slokam, for a portion of a slokam from Charaka Samhita. I don't find any other explanation as good as what is being told by Sri Aurobindo. No wonder why he's known as a social reformer. I personally feel this is exactly what we need to do. We don't have to, it's not that by being ancient we need to forgo the motor vehicles and go for bullock carts, or instead of the electricity we need to go for oil lamp. That's not exactly what is meant. But when we are using a motor vehicle or a electricity lamp, we should be aware, because based of our understanding of the nature, its impact on the society, we should be aware of what goes wrong or what affects, how badly these factors can actually affect our environment. Similarly, with Ayurveda, we need to see what is actually needed at this particular time, place. And this is what Sri Aurobindo speaks. And only when we renew, we relive and we continue to make Ayurveda available as a living tradition. But what needs to be adopted, what needs to be assimilated, what changes are to be made, it should happen only with proper dialogue. We need to, the physicians should speak to physicians. And especially in a Kalikala, such a unified platform where we can actually speak about the challenges this particular transition actually poses. Then only we will be able to bring changes as explained by Sri Aurobindo. So these are my questions, my points which I wanted to communicate, and I thank the organizers for this opportunity. I wish the students all the best, and then continue adding more questions. As I said in the beginning, when you have the right question, you have started understanding the solution also. It's not me said, it was told by Carl Jung, but keep that in mind, and keep in mind also that only the excellent can actually survive in this new world of Ayurveda. Thank you very much.